4 drivers have been eliminated from the NASCAR playoffs, and despite a valiant late race effort, Kyle Busch's winless streak continues to grow. How's it going, y'all? My name is Eric, and welcome to tonight's episode of Out of the Groove. Another night race, which means another late night race review. Thank you all for tuning in. If you're staying up to watch this thing, if you're watching it next morning, happy Sunday. Before we talk about all of the drama and all of the big stories from tonight's race at Bristol Motor Speedway, we've got to thank today's sponsor, Alka Seltzer. Alka Seltzer are big supporters of NASCAR, specifically Out of the Groove. Alka Seltzer starts neutralizing acid within seconds for heartburn relief. It's also perfect to combat indigestion or an upset stomach. If you're not feeling 100%, make sure you have some Alka Seltzer at hand. You've heard their name. They've been a household name for years. I remember when my favorite driver, Matt Kenseth, used to run the Alka Seltzer car in the then NASCAR Busch Series. Absolutely fantastic paint scheme. Alka Seltzer is available at Walmarts everywhere, so head to your local Walmart and make sure you have some Alka Seltzer at hand. Again, a big thank you to Alka Seltzer for sponsoring tonight's episode of Out of the Groove. And boy, after a long and grueling playoff cutoff race here at Bristol Motor Speedway, there are 4 drivers I can think of specifically that might not be feeling too good. They might end up needing some Alka Seltzer down the line. But before we talk about the 4 drivers who were eliminated tonight, let's start honestly with the finish of tonight's race, because I believe that was honestly the highlight of the event. I'll put the entire race on the Groovy gauge at the end of the show, but to start with, tonight's Bristol race, I thought in general was pretty good. It had a dry period from about lap 250 to 350, 400. That second third of the race, the start of stage 3 really, was a bit dry. The field got extremely spread out, and then there were a bunch of drivers in the top 10 that kept having to pit for loose wheels or flat tires, and that messed everything up. At one point, there were only 6 drivers on the lead lap. Part of that was drivers falling off because of tire issues. Another part of that was Kevin Harvick putting together record lap times, it felt like. But the end of this race lived up to my lofty Bristol Motor Speedway expectations. For the first time really this year that I can think of, it was the Kevin Harvick versus Kyle Busch duel at the end of the race. Mano a mano, there was nobody else even in their zip code. The two of them weaving between slower lap traffic, lap after lap, trading the lead at a couple different points. Ultimately, it was Kevin Harvick by about this much, holding off Kyle Busch on the final lap. I really thought in the final set of corners, Kyle Busch drove in and deep on the inside. Harvick had to go low to avoid a lap car, and really, I thought Kyle Busch ran right up behind him. I think if really wanted to, I think Kyle Busch could have knocked Harvick up out of the way. Credit to Kyle Busch, he raced Kevin Harvick very cleanly. Harvick raced Kyle Busch cleanly right back. It's 2 of the best, I would argue the 2 best drivers in the NASCAR Cup Series today, going at it head-to-head at a tough racetrack in front of 30,000 fans, the largest crowd at a NASCAR Cup Series race since March, I guess. You could just tell, especially in Kevin Harvick's post-race interview, that this win meant a lot to him. Harvick has won a lot of races this year. I mean, 9 wins on the year for Kevin Harvick, but in a lot of ways, this one seemed to be the most meaningful. He really had to work for this one, there was no doubt. Even though Kyle Busch is winless this season, he's still the defending NASCAR Cup Series champion. He's still the king of Bristol over the last decade and a half. Holding off Kyle Busch at Bristol one-on-one for like 50, 60 laps straight like that, that's pretty impressive, and I think Kevin Harvick knew that what he had accomplished tonight was quite remarkable. He was proud of himself, and I think having fans in the stands, which Kevin Harvick early in the year said he wasn't going to celebrate wins anymore until fans were allowed back in the stands, I think that obviously meant a lot to Harvick as well. A big night for Kevin Harvick caps off a very good round for Harvick, winning 2 of the first 3 races of the 2020 NASCAR playoffs. He kind of lucked into that win at Darlington a couple weeks back, but there was no luck involved tonight at Bristol. It was all skill. Teams seemed to have given him the best race car all night long, especially on the longer runs. Kyle Busch put up, like I said, a valiant effort at the end, hung right with him up until the checkered flag, but didn't quite have enough to get it done. Kyle Busch, after the race, he didn't try to blame someone else or make excuses. I mean, he knew it was a tough battle, and both drivers raced each other with a lot of respect, and he just came up a tiny bit short in this one tonight. Lap cars, kind of were the equalizer, or in a lot of ways, maybe were the wild card in this whole thing, but it was a pretty typical Bristol Motor Speedway finish, and credit to Kevin Harvick, he earned it tonight. So a big win, a statement win for Kevin Harvick. This is his second win this season with the 750 horsepower rules package. Bristol's a pretty different track from Phoenix, where we'll be racing for the championship, of course, but still something to note there. Got to give that team some confidence heading into the next couple of rounds. But perhaps the biggest story from tonight is that 4 drivers saw their championship hopes go up in smoke, in some cases quite literally. William Byron, Cole Custer, Matt DiBenedetto, and Ryan Blaney have been eliminated from the 2020 NASCAR playoffs. I want to start by talking about William Byron. William Byron came into this race tonight 3 points below the cut line. He seemed to be running okay tonight, but midway through the race, there was apparently a stack up on the track behind a lap car. William Byron apparently ran into the back of Christopher Bell, and that knocked the radiator out of Byron's car, sent him to the garage. He was done for the day, and ultimately his playoff hopes were completely dashed at that point. We never got a replay from NBC, and I hate to be too hard on the guys. This is just bad luck. It's not their fault that they didn't know a wreck was going to happen at that specific moment in time. And I know NBC and Fox as well, when they were covering the Cup Series races, were not sending their full camera crews to these races. With the pandemic as a concern, NASCAR's made an effort to limit the number of people at the track. So have the TV crews, the TV networks. There are not as many camera guys at the track as there would be during a normal race weekend. So I certainly don't blame the camera guys who are there for missing this, kind of random crash. But I will say maybe it's time for TV to send their full crew out to these races. I still think it's a little weird that Rick Allen, Dale Earnhardt Jr. and company aren't actually at the track still. They're still calling these races from Charlotte, and it has hindered the quality of the broadcast from time to time because they're limited as far as what they can see to what's available on their monitors. They're not able to just look out and see the whole track like they usually are. So I will say that has hindered the quality of the broadcast a little bit. I noticed this week Steve Letarte was on location, so maybe they're starting to open things up a little bit. Rutledge Wood as well. They let him out of his basement, I guess, and let him go to the party zone to the race tonight. So maybe slowly but surely they are starting to let more of their broadcasters and more of their TV crew back at the racetrack. But certainly the fact that they missed arguably the biggest event, the biggest incident of the night, in my opinion, tells me they don't have enough people at the racetrack. And I understand COVID's a concern, but man, the quality of the broadcast is important, especially when we're getting late into the season, playoff races where every incident means that much more. It hurts the fan experience, it hurts the viewing experience, and it hurts the sport in general when we miss those incidents and we never get a clear replay. We really just had to take William Byron at his word for it at the end there. He had to kind of tell us the whole story, and we had to sit there and listen, and that was disappointing. But again, I don't blame any of the camera people or anyone that was at the track tonight. Not their fault. I just think we need more camera guys at the track. I think they can manage it. But focusing back on William Byron, I'm a little disappointed that he's out of the playoffs this early on. He had some good momentum coming into the playoffs. He ran well at the Daytona Road Course. That Dover doubleheader, he kind of split that weekend. He ran terrible on Saturday, but ran really well and had a top 5, I think, on Sunday. And then the very next week, he won at Daytona, the final regular season race. William Byron came into these playoffs on a pretty solid roll. I thought he'd at least get through the first round, but unfortunately no, and tonight's DNF was ultimately the final nail in the coffin, so a bit disappointing for William Byron, but hey, at least he can say that he broke through and got a win this season. That's honestly more important than anything else, in my opinion, is William Byron needed to start winning races here in his third year, and he got one. He got one. He'd like to have a couple more, but one's I'll take it. And then if I move on to Cole Custer, the one and only rookie driver in the playoffs this year, hey, his consolation prize at least is that he's going to win the Rookie of the Year, kind of by default, but certainly, I didn't have super high expectations for Cole Custer coming into these playoffs. He actually ran surprisingly well the first race at Darlington and then last week at Richmond. He was a top 10 threat most of both of those races. Tonight, they had issues early on, got damaged, but never ran well. They ran outside the top 20 most of the night, so no surprise he missed the playoffs. We've got to talk about the two Penske cars. We'll start with Matt DiBenedetto. I'm not super surprised Matt DiBenedetto's been eliminated in this first round. Unlike William Byron, who had at least a little bit of momentum going his way, Matt DiBenedetto and the 21 team limped into the playoffs those last few races, and unfortunately in this first round they never turned things around, and tonight was just disappointing. Bristol is, in theory, Matt DiBenedetto's best track, and they played that fun strategy game early on and managed to hang out in the top 5 for a while. They needed to win tonight, and they never really came close to doing it, so an admirable effort, but unfortunately too little too late for Matt DiBenedetto. Now, DiBenedetto's future with that team is still very much in question. He told the media earlier this week that the deadline for Wood Brothers Racing to pick up his option for next year is September 30th. That's like 10 days away. And Matt DiBenedetto not winning a race this year, flaming out in the first round of the playoffs. I would say overall not running quite as well as I hoped he would this year. I worry that these next 10 days might be some long, long days for Matt DiBenedetto as he questions his future in the NASCAR Cup Series. I personally would like to see him stay with the Wood Brothers for at least one more season. This is his first year with the team, first year in a truly competitive car, and it's been anything but normal. No practice, no qualifying, a new team, a new crew chief to get used to. I have to imagine it's been a very difficult transition for Matt DiBenedetto this year. Most of the drivers who switched teams this year, we've seen them go through, I would say, more difficult transitions than expected. I would hope Wood Brothers Racing picks up his option for next year, but there's some rumblings that Menards might be decreasing their involvement with that team, and Matt DiBenedetto does not bring much of his own sponsorship, so the writing might be on the wall for Austin Cindric to take over this ride next season. I think that's certainly possible, but sounds like we'll find out in the next couple of weeks what Matt DiBenedetto's future at the 21 car looks like. Moving over to the main Team Penske team, we've got to talk about Ryan Blaney. Possibly the biggest surprise of this first round. I don't know what else you can say about this season, but it's been a huge disappointment for Ryan Blaney, and I'm a big Ryan Blaney fan, personally. But 3 or 4 years ago, I think back to 2017, when he got his first career win at Pocono, he held off Kevin Harvick in that epic finish. I was on the Ryan Blaney hype train. I looked at Ryan Blaney and thought, okay, we could be looking at like a Chase Elliott, Ryan Blaney, Kyle Larson, big three moving forward. The youth movement is going to be led by this three-headed monster, including Ryan Blaney. And since then, yes, Ryan Blaney now has 4 career wins in the NASCAR Cup Series. 2 of them have been on super speedways. One was the Roval in 2018 where he just got lucky. And he's doing all this in Penske equipment while his teammate Joey Logano wins the 2018 championship. His other teammate Brad Keselowski continues to put up 3 wins a season almost religiously. I think the jury is still out on Ryan Blaney. Is he a future Cup superstar? I mean, he's a star. He's popular. He drives for a good team. He gets some good finishes. He's a star. But is he ever going to be a Cup Series superstar? I think the jury's still out. Early on this year, the team had tons of speed, but rarely was able to get the finish to show for it. Second half of the season, the team didn't have speed and the team didn't have finishes. It's just been a struggle the last couple months, I would say, for Ryan Blaney's team. It was a struggle tonight for most of the night. It was a struggle this entire round. I thought Ryan Blaney would at least get through the first round. I thought he might get out in the second round because the team hadn't shown much speed in recent weeks. But a first round exit, I have to say, even surprised me a little bit. And I think it surprised most people when they were writing out their brackets a few weeks back. So Ryan Blaney, probably the biggest surprise from this first round, and I would say easily the biggest disappointment of 2020 at this point. Now, those are the 4 drivers who are out. Here are the 12 drivers that will move on. As you can see, points have reset, but that includes, playoff points that teams and drivers have amassed throughout the season, including this most recent round of the playoffs. So you see Kevin Harvick has a nice cushy lead. The second round starts next week at Las Vegas. Going to be a chaotic round with Vegas followed by Talladega and the Charlotte Roval. Going to be a mess. Playoff points are going to matter more than ever. This Las Vegas race is going to matter more than ever because if you win that race, you don't have to worry for 2 weeks, and that's going to be extremely important to a lot of these drivers. Anyway, I haven't really looked at it yet tonight, but here are your full top 20 finishers. I want to give a little shout out to Eric Jones, running third at one of his best tracks on the schedule. Much needed for a guy who still doesn't know his 2021 plans. Tyler Reddick finishing top 5. A very quiet night for Reddick, but easily the strongest rookie of the night, so shout out to him. Busher, Priest, and McDowell top 10s. That's cool too. I'm giving these guys shout outs. They deserve it. Austin Dillon ends up 12th, the feel-good story of round 1, finishing 2nd, 4th, and 12th the first 3 races. He's moving on to the second round. We'll see if he can get much further than that. I mean, I'll be honest, the momentum is there. But anyway, those are your top 20 finishers from tonight's race. Now we got to put this thing on the infamous groovy gauge. Following along on social media, I feel like fans' sort of reaction to this race sort of started pretty high. It was pretty good first, I would say first 2 stages were pretty entertaining. You had some wrecks, Jimmy Johnson, Ricky Stenhouse making content. Obviously, William Byron running into the back of Christopher Bell. A lot of drivers having issues early on that kept things interesting. But then once stage 3 started and Harvick ran away with things for a while there, I noticed fans were pretty down on this race, and fair enough. It got pretty dry after a while, but the finish picked up quite a bit, and I think a lot of fans left tonight's race with a good taste in their mouth. I love Bristol Motor Speedway. It's such a fun track. Even when the field is fairly strung out, there's still action happening everywhere because someone's always getting lapped. Often there's a 3 wide happening somewhere on the track, and a little short track like that, that's treacherous. We saw how difficult it was to manage tires. We saw how difficult it was for even the 2 best cars, Kyle Busch and Kevin Harvick, to wheel it in traffic late in this race. They were sliding almost every lap. When Bristol is good, it is fantastic. And when Bristol is kind of average like it was tonight, I'd say it was still pretty darn good. I'm going to give tonight's race a 70% on the groovy gauge. Not the best Bristol race ever, not as good as the spring race. The spring race was fantastic, but I thought this race, honestly, was probably a little better than the All-Star race earlier this summer. In the All-Star race, I think they put too much PJ1 down and the groove never really widened. It was always right around the bottom, which a lot of people love about old Bristol, but just didn't really work earlier this summer in the All-Star race. I thought tonight, track really turned into a multiple groove track. Even at the end, Kyle Busch, I thought, was making up a lot of time on Kevin Harvick by running the bottom, left sides in the sticky stuff all the way around. Really seemed to work for him. So it really was a multiple lane, multi-groove track at Bristol tonight, and I love that. I love when Bristol has more than one passing opportunity. But a 70% for me. Let me know what you guys think of tonight's race down below in the comments. I look forward to checking that out. And that's about it for tonight's episode. Again, a big thank you to Alka Seltzer for sponsoring this episode of Out of the Groove. Be sure to check them out at your local Walmart. Thank you all for watching. Be sure to subscribe if you are new to the channel. Follow me on Twitter, follow me on Instagram, and a major thank you to my fantastic Patreon supporters. Couldn't do this show without your tremendous support, so for that, I thank you greatly. Got some videos planned for later this week. Of course, the California Clash, an iRacing event that I'm hosting, will be live Wednesday night at 9 p.m. Eastern time, so be sure to tune in to that. You aren't going to want to miss it. That's all I've got for tonight's episode. Thank you all for watching. Have a great rest of your weekend.